Hi, I'm Norm Abram, and welcome to another season of the new Yankee Workshop. We've got an interesting collection this time, including this old-fashioned Victorian umbrella stand.
The famous face of public television carpentry, Norm Abram, suddenly vanished from our screens after 21 years of perfect work, leaving millions of fans completely heartbroken. While his steady hands built trust in American homes, a dark storm of personal rumors, heavy physical pain, and devastating losses was quietly unfolding behind the workshop doors. What really happened to Norm Abram will shock you.
It means a lot to us that there are still people who are enjoying the new Yankee Workshop, and we want to reach out and thank you all.
And just have a great time woodworking. It's a fun thing to do.
Let's talk about the peaceful weekends of the past. Every single week, millions of families did something very special. They sat down in front of their television sets and watched a quiet man walk into a small wooden barn in Massachusetts. He wore a classic plaid shirt and carried a tool belt on his hip. He didn't shout at the camera. He didn't have loud music, flashing lights, or even celebrity guests. There were no elimination rounds and no drama. It was just a humble builder, his tools, and a perfect plan. His name was Norm Abram, and he was the host of the hit woodworking show called The New Yankee Workshop. For more than 2 decades, this show was a quiet sanctuary for anyone who loved to build things. Norm made carpentry look so easy that viewers felt that they could build anything from a simple birdhouse to a giant cabinet. The series was incredibly popular and made millions of dollars. It was fully funded and loved by viewers of all ages. Yet in the year 2009, the show suddenly stopped airing. There was no big farewell episode. The cameras simply stopped rolling, and the workshop went completely cold. This sudden end left a massive void in the hearts of millions. Why would a man at the peak of his career walk away from a successful show that was still making millions? Some people thought the network canceled the show because of low ratings. Others thought the corporate sponsors pulled their funding. But the real reason Norm stepped away from the cameras was far more complex than any financial deal. So what was the dark secret behind the sudden silence? To find out, we have to travel back to the freezing streets of Boston, where a young boy learned a dangerous lesson. Norm Abram was born on October 3, 1949, in the town of Woonsocket, Rhode Island. He didn't grow up in a wealthy family, and he didn't dream of becoming a famous television star. Instead, he spent his childhood watching his father, Louis Abram, who was a hard-working builder. Louis was a very humble and kind man who worked with his hands every day to support his family. He was Norm's mentor and the person Norm looked up to more than anyone else in the world. When Norm was still a small child, his family moved to Milford, Massachusetts. It was here, in the cold basement of their family home, that Norm first discovered the joy of carpentry. His father spent countless hours showing him how to handle wood with extreme care and patience. On Christmas Day, when Norm was only 7 or 8 years old, he received a gift that changed his life forever. It was a real tool set called the Handy Andy tool set. It had sharp metal tools that would never be allowed on a toy shelf today because they were so dangerous. But young Norm treated these tools with respect. His father showed him how to keep his workspace clean and how to protect his fingers from the sharp blades. It was not long before Norm had to put those lessons to use in a very real way. On Christmas Eve in the year 1958, most 9-year-old boys were sitting by the fireplace, waiting for Santa Claus to arrive. But Norm was standing on a cold, dusty construction site in Boston. His father had taken him along to help install hardwood floors. Back then, builders did not have the easy, air-powered nail guns that we use today. Every single floorboard had to be nailed down by hand, using heavy hammers and sharp-cut nails. Norm's hands were freezing, and his arms grew incredibly sore as he swung his hammer over and over again. But the most terrifying part of that day was the way his father cut the wood. Louis did not have a safe, modern table saw. Instead, he took a heavy circular power saw and mounted it upside down inside a wooden milk crate. This was their homemade table saw. A single slip of the hand near that spinning, unguarded blade would easily cost a worker their fingers. Norm's father showed him how to move slowly, how to focus entirely on the work, and how to never rush a cut. This dangerous day on the job site stayed with Norm for the rest of his life. What happened next will show you just how tough his early life really was. Norm spent his high school summer breaks working alongside his father. He learned how to frame houses, lay roofs, and hang carpets. When he finished high school, his family wanted him to have an easier life. They encouraged him to go to college. Norm enrolled at the University of Massachusetts Amherst to study mechanical engineering. He even joined a fraternity called Phi Lambda Phi. But as he sat in those warm, quiet lecture halls, listening to professors talk about math equations on a blackboard, he felt completely out of place. He wanted to hold real tools, feel the texture of pine, and smell the fresh sawdust. He tried switching his major to business administration, but even that couldn't keep his interest. Just a few credits short of getting his degree, Norm made a brave choice that shocked his family. He packed his bags and walked away from college. Many people told him that he was making a terrible mistake. But Norm knew what made him happy. He got a job with a large New England construction company and worked so hard that he became a site supervisor in just 3 years. In the year 1976, he started his own contracting company called Integrated Structures. He was a successful builder, but he was still completely unknown to the public. A sudden meeting with a television producer would change everything, and what happened next will surprise you. In the late 1970s, a famous television producer named Russell Morash was looking for a builder. Russell wanted to build a small wooden barn in his backyard. He asked an architect friend for a recommendation, and the friend gave him Norm's name. Russ visited a building site where Norm was working to see if he was any good. He expected to see a typical, messy construction site with trash scattered everywhere. But when Russ arrived, he was absolutely stunned. The job site was perfectly clean, and the pile of scrap wood in the corner was so tiny that it could fit into a small box. Russ hired Norm to build his backyard barn. As he watched Norm work, Russ realized this quiet carpenter had a rare, magical quality. He was incredibly calm, never made mistakes, and explained his work with absolute clarity. Russ was currently planning a new television show called This Old House. He asked Norm to help renovate a rundown Victorian house in Boston. Norm agreed, thinking it would be a simple, one-time job. He had no idea that this quiet show would become a massive national sensation and turn him into a household name overnight. As the show grew more popular, Russ realized that viewers wanted more than just home renovations. They wanted to learn how to build the beautiful furniture inside those homes. So Russ made a plan to build a brand new show around Norm, located right inside the backyard barn Norm had built for him years before. In the year 1989, the new Yankee workshop officially premiered on PBS. To the viewers at home, it looked like Norm walked into the shop and built a beautiful table within 30 minutes. But what the cameras never showed was the exhausting, secret labor that went into every single episode. You see, Norm did not just build the furniture once. To make the show flow smoothly without any pauses for glue or paint to dry, Norm had to build multiple copies of every single project. Before the filming ever started, Norm spent days in the shop building a complete prototype copy. He used this first build to solve all the tricky cuts and test the joints. Then, when the camera started rolling, he built a second copy. If the project was very complicated, he would even build a third copy. Now this meant Norm was doing 3 times the amount of work shown on television, entirely by himself. Where did all this beautiful furniture go when the show was over? Some pieces went to Norm's own home, but many of the finest pieces went straight to Russ Morash's summer home on Nantucket Island. This process required an extreme amount of physical dedication and long hours of quiet work. But while Norm was pouring his heart and soul into these duplicate builds, a dark cloud was gathering over his personal life. Rumors began to spread that Norm was hiding a massive family tragedy that was quietly breaking his heart. As Norm Abram became one of the most famous faces on television, people became very curious about his private life. He was a very quiet and private man who didn't share much about his family on screen. This lack of information led to a very sad rumor that spread across the internet for many years. If you search for Norm's name online today, you might run into tragic articles claiming that he suffered a heartbreaking family loss. These articles claim that in the late 1990s, Norm's only son, a young man named Christopher Abram, tragically passed away. Some websites say Christopher was 15 years old, while others say he was 24 and trying to become a professional musician. They claim Norm was so devastated by the loss of his son that he began to dedicate episodes of his show to him. It's a deeply emotional story that has brought tears to many fans' eyes. But is this heartbreaking tragedy actually true? When you look closely at the real facts of Norm's life, you discover a very surprising truth. Norm Abram never had a son named Christopher. He was married to a woman named Laura Cohn, and they only had one child together, a daughter named Lindsay. Lindsay was born during the second project of This Old House, and Norm was always incredibly proud of her. So where did this sad rumor come from? It seems that internet blogs and unverified websites mixed up Norm's name with other woodworking figures, like the writer named Christopher Schwartz, who often wrote about Norm's show. Over time, computer algorithms mashed these names and facts together to create a fake family tragedy just to get people to click on their websites. While the internet was busy spreading fake stories about his family, Norm was actually building a peaceful life with his second wife, Elise Houndstein. They were married in September 1999, after Norm's divorce from Laura Cohn was finalized in 1996. Elise is a highly talented ceramic artist and potter. Together, they built a classic colonial-style home in Carlisle, Massachusetts, where they could both create their art in peace. Elise valued her privacy very highly, so Norm made a strict rule to never discuss their home life on television. They spent their free time cooking, entertaining friends, and exploring art galleries together. It was a wonderful partnership built on mutual respect. But the years of heavy physical labor were beginning to cast a long shadow over their peaceful home. What happened next would show just how much pain he was really in. Woodworking is a beautiful craft, but it's also incredibly hard on the human body. For 40 years, Norm spent his days lifting heavy oak boards, standing on hard concrete floors, and operating high-vibration power tools. Every single day, he had to maintain absolute focus. He famously warned viewers at the start of every episode to read and follow the safety rules before using any power tools. He was so dedicated to safety that the American Academy of Ophthalmology even gave him a special award in 2009 for his commitment to preventing eye injuries. But you can only push your body so far before it begins to fight back. As Norm entered his late 50s, the constant physical labor was starting to catch up with him. Lifting heavy timber and working under hot studio lights was becoming more difficult. He was filming 2 major television shows at the same time, This Old House and the new Yankee Workshop. This meant he was working almost constantly, with very little time to rest his aching joints. Norm's father had taught him to never work when he was tired or distracted, because that was when dangerous accidents happened. Norm realized that if he kept pushing himself this hard, he might make a terrible mistake with a spinning saw blade. He knew he had to protect his health and safety. On October 16, 2009, public television station WGBH Boston made a sudden announcement that shocked the woodworking community. They stated that no more episodes of the new Yankee Workshop would ever be produced. Immediately, fans began to panic. They assumed the show must have run out of money or that the corporate sponsors had backed out. But the truth was actually the opposite. The show was fully funded and it was highly profitable. The corporate sponsors loved Norm, and they were ready to write checks for millions of dollars just to keep the show running. But Norm did something very few television stars ever do. He walked away from the money. He walked away from the fame and the big checks. He wanted to focus on other projects and to reduce his heavy workload. Instead of replacing Norm with another host, the producers, they made a very bold decision. They believed that the show was Norm, and it was impossible to replace his unique, calming presence with anyone else. So they chose to let the show end with its dignity intact. Norm continued to work as the master carpenter on This Old House, but his appearances became fewer as the years went on. Then, in May 2022, Norm announced that he was finally hanging up his tool belt for good after 43 incredible years on television. To give him a proper send-off, PBS created a beautiful tribute special titled The House That Norm Built, which aired on October 3, 2022. But as the special aired, many viewers felt a deep sense of worry. When Norm appeared on camera to talk to the audience, he didn't look like the strong carpenter that they had remembered. He had lost a very large amount of weight, and his frame looked quite thin and frail. Some fans on online forums feared that he was suffering from a serious illness like cancer or Parkinson's disease. Toward the end of the tribute program, Norm addressed his health directly to put his fans' minds at ease. He stated very clearly that he was in good health and had plenty of plans to keep himself busy. He explained that he was simply retired and looking forward to finishing his personal home in Carlisle, Massachusetts, as well as spending time boating with his wife along the New England coast. The rapid weight loss was simply the result of an older man stepping away from 40 years of heavy, muscle-building labor. But even though Norm was safe and healthy, the world of public television was about to be hit by a wave of very real tragedies. On June 19, 2024, Russell Morash, the brilliant creator and producer of both shows, passed away at the age of 88. Russ was the man who had discovered him, believed in him, and helped him share his passion with the world. Norm was deeply saddened by the loss of his longtime mentor. Just 2 months later, on August 21, 2024, another beloved member of the team, Roger Cook, passed away at the age of 70. Roger had been the landscape expert on This Old House for decades. He had suffered from a long and difficult illness that had forced him to retire years earlier, and his passing left a massive hole in the hearts of his co-stars and millions of viewers. With his mentor Russ gone and his close friend Roger passed away, it felt like the golden era of television craftsmanship had come to an end. But Norm was not about to let his father's lessons and 40 years of teaching disappear. In the year 2023, Norm and the family of Russell Morash made a very surprising decision. They didn't want their life's work to be locked away behind expensive corporate paywalls, so they decided to launch the official New Yankee Workshop YouTube channel. They began uploading every single one of their classic episodes, completely free for anyone to watch. Now, a new generation of young builders can watch Norm walk into his shop, put on his safety glasses, and teach them how to build something beautiful with their own hands. Norm's dream was always to encourage young people to master the vocational trades and close the skills gap in America. By making his entire life's work free to the world, he's ensured that his teaching will never die. It's a beautiful way to keep his father's lessons alive and to make sure that the quiet workshop in Massachusetts remains open for everyone forever. Norm Abram built a legacy of trust, safety, and quiet patience that helped millions of people feel capable of creating something beautiful with their own hands. Although the years have brought heavy physical strain, online rumors, and the tragic loss of his closest television family, the gentle master carpenter has given his final gift to the world, ensuring that his famous workshop will remain open forever for anyone who wants to learn.